can't even enjoy these films. Because I know what's coming. I've noticed the routine. Anytime Rob starts enjoying himself, another bullshit movie follows. Well, I'm not falling for it. Not this time. I'm on to you, Spielberg. Who the hell are you?
I'm George Jones. But unlike the country singer, I don't sing. But I do show up.
Yeah, okay, that doesn't help me.
Just calm down and get a hold of yourself. I'm aware of what you've been through.
I mean, all the movies have been really good. But that means another shit one's coming!
I'm here to help you.
Bullshit!
Whether you accept my idea or not, I'm here to show you a very good movie.
Followed by another crappin'?
You really must see this movie. It'll revitalize everything.
Nah.
Trust me, Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Huh. That is meant to be a really good movie. Not falling for it!
I, myself, was in part of that movie.
Really?
Well, I'm in the evacuation scene as a military policeman with a bullhorn telling people where to go. And another time I'm in the scene where Francois Truffaut as Professor Lacombe is explaining to the top scientists and security agents of the U.S. how he's developed the communications through musical notes.
You're on! Close Encounters of the Third Kind
Tells the story of Roy, played by Richard Dreyfuss, and one night he is narrowly abducted by aliens.
Well, I mean, they don't really abduct him, do they? I mean, they playfully mess around with the kid's toys, then smack around some mailboxes, and then vacuum everything out of his truck, and then just politely leave. Are they aliens or 16-year-old pranksters?
This is nuts.
Roy now becomes obsessed with the event, and his mind has become fixated on the vision of an unknown mountain shape.
Looks like a pile of poop.
Pushing away his wife, played by Terry Garr.
Phoebe's mum from Friends.
Well, meantime, a local single mother and her young son named Barry are being terrorized by aliens in their isolated country farmhouse.
Okay, Barry is not a little boy's name.
Why not?
I'm just refusing to accept that. Just, come on Barry, let's change your bum. No. Everyone named Barry came out of the womb as a 30-year-old man.
That is a wonderful way to win over your children.
But Barry is abducted.
Because his mother is useless and a terrible parent.
Why are you so angry?
I think it stems from my childhood.
Don't you think I'm taking this really well?
Now Roy's wife realizes he is insane and leaves him.
Did she, though?
What do you mean?
I mean, he goes insane and then she gets the kids in the car and leaves, but to me it came across as just an argument. But then he and the useless mother Gillian head to a mountain to find a military site on some Area 51 type deal, and they end up making out. Ross took more time to cheat on Rachel.
Wow.
But the movie ends with all the abducted military and civilians returning to the Earth, including Barry.
That Barry!
And Roy finally comes to terms with his obsession of contacting the other side. It's really an awesome movie.
Yeah, it is. But it's not perfect.
I beg your pardon.
The film can actually be tracked back to director Spielberg's childhood, where his parents shoved the children into a car without warning and drove off to an area surrounded by people where they all witnessed a meteor shower in New Jersey, leading to him as a teenager making a sci-fi movie called Firelight.
Spielberg would later use many of the actual scenes, almost scene for scene from Firelight in Close Encounters. Later in his career, around 1973, he managed, after 20th Century Fox turned him down, to land a deal with Columbia Pictures to make what would become the future history-making sci-fi movie.
Okay man, I gotta ask, what was it like working with Spielberg?
Well, it all began, of course, at the auditions back in around the first part of May in 1976. Yeah, at first I expected to see somebody like Alfred Hitchcock or one of the other type directors you used to see, John Ford. Come to realize one day on the set who he was. He's just this young college type. But he seemed to be in charge of everything. He knew exactly what was being said, where, when, and how. And that was interesting to me, that he had everything under control. One of the things I noticed, and they said that he did it all the time, and that was that he would look at every scene through the camera before he gave the okay to shoot it. He was amiable, and he wasn't a stuffed shirt at all. He was easy to get around, easy to talk to. I had the opportunity on several occasions to be on things that were interesting, such as they were needing, they had gotten a black actor. They decided not to use him, and they were going to use another actor, so they got out this huge book. It was about yay thick, and it's what would amount to a college yearbook, but it was for movie stars, movie actors. And they'd open up the book, and each star, you see on the page, it'd be a photograph and a paragraph. And it'd be either 5 stars, as the most you could get, or down to 1 star, or no stars. And so, one thing I thought was funny was to see John Wayne in his picture, and it had 5 stars and a list of his accomplishments. They finally came upon an actor, Carl Withers, who played in the Rocky movies. And so Steven stood to the director, to the casting director. He said, "Go ahead and call him, see what he wants." So he went off and made a phone call, came back. He said, "Well, I talked to him, and he said he'll come for $500 a day plus expenses." Steven said, "Okay, call him back and tell him to get on the first plane here." So he did. And when he got here, I kind of thought he seemed kind of full of himself. He wasn't very friendly, and he's just standoffish. Just chumming around with Spielberg, walking around with him. He allowed me to follow him around. In fact, I've got a photograph of, we took and stopped shooting, took a pause, and he came over and I was playing in the MP, and I had the whistle, and he come over and he grabbed my whistle and picked it up and started blowing on it. And all the guys around got a chuckle out of that. Spielberg was a nice guy to work with, and he seemed to have all the respect of everybody.
I never would have believed it.
Originally, the film was intended to be a documentary about people who believed in aliens, but it was then changed to a low-budget feature.
Well, that's true, but not to be denied, he pitched the idea to several other directors and producers, some of whom called it the dumbest ideas they'd ever seen or heard.
Work on Jaws caused delays, and the original title was actually Watch the Skies. That sucks.
Yes, sir.
Damn it, I know this.
Spielberg practically won the lottery with the success of Jaws. It did win him the creative control he desired and the ability to make his sci-fi movie any way he wanted.
Screenwriter Paul Schrader handed in the first draft, but Spielberg called it one of the most embarrassing screenplays ever professionally handed in. Ouch.
Yeah, it really was atrocious.
What, did you read it?
No, but the plot was going to be about a 45-year-old Air Force officer who was debunking the idea of aliens until one day he had a contact of his own. And then he spent the next 15 years trying to prove his theory.
It's not too different to the film that we got though, right?
It was stupid.
That's good, I like that.
Many rewrites were underway, but the pressure on the director was insane. Jaws was a massive hit, so everyone expected Spielberg to make another blockbuster. But sci-fi movies weren't popular back then. He was literally putting his entire career on the line.
NASA even wrote to Spielberg advising him not to make the movie, as it could be incredibly dangerous. NASA's warning, though, rather than dissuade him, it actually inspired him to continue making the movie.
My kind of guy.
Right.
It was during the rewrites when the title was changed and filming began on May the 16th, 1976, though there's speculation that it actually started at the end of 1975 instead. Well, George, which one was it?
I still have my paycheck stubs. First one I got was June the 2nd, 1976.
Huh? The more you know.
All this bullshit!
Initially, Richard Dreyfuss wanted $500,000, which the studio refused to pay, and instead approached Al Pacino, Jack Nicholson, and Gene Hackman. Because they would cost less? Pacino wasn't interested in the script, Nicholson thought anyone would be too intimidated by the special effects, and Hackman's marriage was in trouble and he refused to spend that much time away from home. James Caan was considered, but he wanted $1 million as well as 10% of the film's box office gross, which is when they reapproached Richard Dreyfuss, and they didn't quite reach his salary offer but managed to get him on board for less than intended.
Well, originally, Spielberg refused to shoot Jaws on location because it was a nightmare to film. Weather, the sun, and the hydraulic sharks kept blowing hoses and sinking at inopportune times. And he wanted to film on sound stages, but was unable to do so.
Furthermore, when pitching the idea originally, Spielberg said the film would only cost $2.7 million. It ended up being around 19.4. The studio admitted if they knew it would have cost that much, they would have never given it the go-ahead, as they just didn't have that kind of money.
Troubles continued, though, when one of Alabama's seasonal afternoon thunderstorms caused severe damage with a lightning strike to the soundstage. But the incident didn't interfere with Spielberg's vision. If anything, during production, he became more inspired by other films, leading him to add additional scenes, which led to further delays in production.
Tell me another story about Spielberg.
He had a habit when he was ready to take a break. He had a motorcycle that he kept nearby, and he would just tell everybody, take a break for an hour or whatever, and then he'd hop on the motorcycle and off he'd go. And I wonder how many people in Mobile realized that they had Steven Spielberg riding in the neighborhood in a motorcycle.
Are they for real?
The budget of the visual effects alone cost $3.3 million, which could have funded an entire movie on its own. And shooting was done in complete secrecy to prevent made-for-TV rip-offs. Even people on set were a concern, so everybody had to wear name badges. Spielberg himself actually forgot his one day and wasn't even allowed in.
Puppetry was also attempted for the look of the aliens, but it didn't work, so they hired about 50 local 6-year-old girls.
The epic, terrifying aliens from Close Encounters of the Third Kind were played by a bunch of 6-year-old girls.
Yeah, you got a problem with that?
No, not at all, sir.
I know this sounds crazy, but
Spielberg has said to this day that the last 25 minutes of Close Encounters, where they all meet the aliens, was the hardest sequence he has ever had to edit down in his entire career, to make it as magical and whimsical as possible.
Icon John Williams, like usual, did Spielberg's score and was nominated for 2 Academy Awards that year, but only one for Star Wars, though he did pick up 2 Grammys for this one.
Well, there's also been a lot of analysis that people have found watching the film spotting religious themes and metaphors within the story.
I saw none. But I rarely do. It's a film about aliens.
Hey!
A really good film about aliens.
you really love this.
The movie premiered on November the 16th, 1977 in New York City, setting a new record of earning $17.3 million in its opening weekend alone.
It would end up making a worldwide total of $288 million, making it Columbia Pictures' most successful movie ever made at the time. Jean Renoir compared Spielberg's storytelling to Jules Verne and Georges Méliès, while Ray Bradbury called it the single greatest science fiction movie in existence.
However, amazingly, Spielberg actually wasn't happy with the film at first. He wanted another 6 months to perfect it and release it the following year, but the studio were risking a lot of money and pressured him to release it immediately.
Due to an agreement, though, Spielberg was able to release a special edition that was actually shorter than the theatrical cut, with certain scenes trimmed down, but he added more sequences in and even showed the inside of the mothership, which he wished he'd never did. However, in 1998, Spielberg decided to then make a director's cut, erasing the longest version over 2 hours long.
But upon its initial release, the movie was nominated for 8 Academy Awards but only picked up Best Cinematography.
It did pick up a British Academy Film Award for Best Production Design and tied with Star Wars for a Saturn Award for Best Direction and Music.
After its success, Spielberg actually wanted to do a sequel, or even a prequel, but he later changed his mind. He decided that for it to be creative enough for a new story, somebody else should make it to give it the time it deserves. So George, tell me, how big was your part in this movie?
Well, actually, we had about 200 people showed up for the auditions, and they had each of us go back in a room and do a little scene. As it sort of reminded me of King Kong when Fay Ray was on the boat and the guy was trying to elicit screams out of her because we were supposed to see something happening along that line. They asked me to be the neighbor, and I told them, I said, well, I can't because I'm supposed to be on the scientist in the last scene. So they said, okay, never mind. Rumor had it that they actually paid the people next door $1,500 to put a window in their garage wall so the neighbor could look out the window at what Dreyfus was doing, just throwing all the mud and stuff in the kitchen window. From there, of course, I ended up down in the evacuation scene at the railroad station as the MP. One Saturday morning, I got a call. They asked me if I could come in and be an extra in the scene that Francois Truffaut was doing as Professor Lacombe. And I kept telling the guy, one of the little directors, he said, come on down here, I want you to sit in the front row. I said, but I've got to be in the... He said, no, don't worry about it, sit down here. So I sat down in the front row, and when they shot the scene, they came down the road. They did a side shot from out this way with the camera in the aisle, and then they came right down through and shot through and past me. And the next day when I showed up for work, Sherry Rhodes was the casting director, and she called me in her office and she says, I'm sorry, I've almost lost my job over this, but we can't use you anymore. Steven's seen your face too many times on film. And I said, well, I tried to tell him I didn't want to be in that. Yeah, I know, but unfortunately, that's the way it is. So my official stay with the movie ended at that point, instead of being in the last scene where the spaceship came into the mountain. It's disappointing, but still it was one of the greatest experiences to be able to hobnob with all these great actors and Steven Spielberg and Bernie Casey and Carl Withers and Dreyfus. It was just a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
Well, just so you know, Richard Dreyfuss's father spent 6 months filming on location, and then all of his scenes were cut too.
Leave me alone, would you please?
What the hell is going on around here?
I mean, the opening titles are completely silent. I thought my copy was broken.
It's art.
What?
I mean, the music does eventually creep in, and they're instantly eerie. They immediately set the tone for the rest of the film.
Somos los primeros. Los primeros en llegar aquí. Fue una cosa que salió del cielo. Tiene una luz muy bonita, pero muy espantosa. Más despacio, por favor.
Okay, what was that?
What? If they can't be bothered to give them Spanish subtitles, I'll do the job for them.
Depuis combien de temps travaillez-vous avec nous sur ce projet?
Oh, but the French get subtitles? What, did Trump direct this? Death to Mexicans!
Wrong. Also, this is the first witness to the alien visits. Have you noticed it's always the crazy old loners who nobody would believe that sees all the crazy stuff take place?
I don't like sand.
I wouldn't trust this little monkey though, man. He snitched on Woody and nearly got him killed.
When the toys come to life, this is actually really creepy. The entire house is wrecked. It's like the demented version of Home Alone.
I have to admit though, the kid who plays Barry, Kerry Guffey, is amazing. Apparently he nailed scenes in just 1 or 2 takes and nearly got himself an Oscar nomination. If he had landed it, he would have become the youngest person to have ever been nominated for an Academy Award in history at the age of 5. But then when he reached his teenage years, he decided to quit acting completely and hasn't looked back since.
Well, good for him. All the actors quit at the top.
Why?
So, what was Richard Dreyfuss like?
He was friendly. He was easy to get along with. He and I used to sit in between takes and trade Shakespeare quotes. He told me that his best liked form of acting was Shakespeare. Hence home, you idle creatures, get you home. Do you not? Being mechanical, you ought not walk upon a laboring day without the sign of thy profession. In the scene when he's making the mountain in the house, he had taken a break. They had sprayed water and mud all over his shirt. So when he came by me, he was going back in the house to shoot the next scene. I handed him 50 cents. I told him, I said, go wash your shirt and clean up. He's always liked to joke. He was a good humor guy. What on earth was that?
Also, he clearly drives off whilst holding the newspaper out in front of him with both hands.
The first time we see the UFO, this is a surreal image. It's incredible, eye-catching, magical, a truly beautiful moment.
I can't even lie, this may actually be one of the best jump scares in history.
And after they vacuum his truck, he watches in silence as the UFO floats past. And it's so eerie. That's the only word for it.
And he turns the radio on slowly and quietly, and Dreyfuss's acting is impeccable as he's trying to take in what on earth he just witnessed.
But for masters of disguises, the aliens aren't exactly stealthy. Just moments later, they fly directly past loads of people.
Don't mind us, just going to see Star Wars, heard it's pretty cool.
Oh my God. Lady? Are you okay? I'm sorry. I didn't even see him. He was just standing right in the middle of the road.
So then you should have seen him. Then some cops follow the UFOs and one ends up driving right off the road and into a lake. Brilliant US police force at its finest.
Roy, what did it look like?
It was like an ice cream cone.
Brilliant detective there.
What flavor?
Okay, that's funny.
But hey, just seen some proof of alien life? Still got time for some tongue tango. But the aliens even start putting ships in deserts. These Martians came all the way to Earth and have just been pulling pranks for most of it. And when we get to your scene, George, I do think it drags a bit. He gets them to chant to some music and it just goes on for a bit too long. Maybe it's because this is the director's cut we're watching, but still it just feels unnecessary. It does come back into play later, but it's just a bit long-winded.
We're going to need a geodetic survey map of Wyoming.
Why would aliens go to Wyoming? Nobody cares about Wyoming.
I actually think this is my favourite shot of the entire movie. It is so powerful. The tension is amazing. It's such an awe-striking and beautiful moment.
But yeah, they can master the art of traveling through space and time, but a door latch is what stops them in their tracks.
I must admit, this is terrifying. A record player sets itself off, the mum tries to protect the kid, everything is under attack. This is on some Ghostbusters level, man.
Hey, at least they vacuumed for her.
Go away!
Oh, okay then. Then she doesn't notice her son crawling away during the attack. Hey, I gotta give the movie balls. Many told Spielberg not to do it as it would have been too dark, but that's what separates this film for its time. A kid gets abducted. My favourite part of this scene is they're all discussing whether or not UFOs are real, and this dorky guy says completely irrelevant stuff.
1951. Back in Sequoia National Park. Had a foot on her. 37 inches. Heel to toe.
Wow.
Made a sound I would not want to hear twice in my life.
And then just sits back down all smug like, yeah, I just proved the existence of aliens. Ha ha. Mom, I think the shark attack really messed up Dad. I find this hilarious. Roy starts screaming and being an idiot, so his wife joins and they start arguing, so the son becomes hysterical and starts freaking out, and then Roy is completely calm and asks them to stop yelling and to cut it out.
He's putting it back, Mrs. Harris.
I'll pay you for this.
Take it.
Nobody move! She has a real hairdryer.
Oh, and when she takes the kids, she tells them to lock the door so Roy can't get in, but she doesn't even roll her window up. He can just reach in and unlock the... Do you see what I'm saying? It kind of defeats the purpose!
You do feel for his character, though. He's clearly become way too obsessed about this thing. And he's taken it too far, but he's now lost everything. How can you not sympathize with the nutball?
He even builds this monstrosity, and the direction is so cool as we're showing the entire thing. You truly feel his insanity at this point.
Oh, and apparently he also drives around with a map in front of his face. It's not even because he's insane now. He did it earlier with a newspaper. He's just a dangerous driver.
The weird thing is, they get onto the secret area and wear gas masks to protect themselves, but then they act confused and surprised when their birds die. What, next you're going to tell me that if you point a gun at someone and pull the trigger, they're going to be hit with a bullet? By the way, that's Lance Henriksen. Yep, Bishop from Aliens, just standing in the background. Not even joking, that's all he does in this movie. Now that I pointed out, you can't unsee it in every scene. See if you can find him. Make a game out of it. It's a lot of fun.
Mais si les vents dominants avaient soufflé du sud au lieu du nord,
prevailing winds were blowing from the south instead of the north,
cette conversation n'aurait même pas lieu.
this conversation would not be taking place. There's nothing wrong with the air.
The birds just miraculously die?
And why did you then wear gas masks, moron?
Have you recently had a close encounter?
Une rencontre plutôt inhabituelle.
A close encounter with something very unusual.
Steven Spielberg? Oh, look, there he is again!
Robert?
Yes.
Oh my god, he actually talked! Then he goes right back to the background again. He never says another line.
There's nothing wrong with the air around here!
So how did the birds die?
Let it go, man.
No, they never explain it. I have to know about the birds.
I don't believe it's real.
Oh, look, there he is again.
And again, this must have been an easy paycheck for the man.
It really is a surreal moment, though, when they watch the spaceships fly in. But how on earth do the aliens not see them as they go past?
Kick at me.
What is this? They're playing music for the aliens. Yes, that's fine, Jenkins, but E.T. is more of a cello kind of guy.
And this is when Roy kisses another woman.
Cheats with another woman! Alright, I must admit, at first I felt like the music thing was a little silly. I do think it drags a bit and goes on for too long, but again, I am watching the director's cut. But at first I thought you're trying to make contact with aliens through music. But I feel like they're trying to make contact and communicate with an entirely different species. I guess there's not many other ways you can do it.
Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang.
The film, I think, does drag a bit before this, but this sequence actually really picks it back up.
And this shot for everyone slowly approaching the mothership is just astounding. This sells the entire movie on its own.
That's for a poster, guys. That ought to do it. Let's go home. Did the ship just fart? The scene just keeps going, and that's when it comes across as silly.
But don't worry, Barry's alive.
I completely forgot about him, I'm not even gonna lie. And his mum has barely mentioned him, hasn't seemed distressed or anything. Mother of the Year!
Yes.
I'm Lance Henriksen. I don't get paid enough to talk. When we see the first alien, it is a bit underwhelming, but I'm not entirely sure what more they could have done with a 1970s budget anyway. It's just funny how it raises its arms like, ta-da!
The other aliens look cooler though. They look so creepy in the dark.
They look like Jimmy Neutron. Their eyes are hilarious.
May the Lord be praised at all times.
Then the scene just ends? What happened? They just walk out, do the reveal, and then they awkwardly turn back around and go back on the ship? And Dreyfus literally approaches the ship, and it's all treated whimsical and magical as his mistress watches him leave. But you're cheating on your wife, and you have 2 kids. If you're getting with this woman, you'll have 3. You're literally abandoning your children to go and get probed by some Martians. Now, Spielberg did admit that he made this movie before he became a father. And if he made it now, he certainly would not have had Roy abandon his kids. My question is, you really needed to have kids to realise that abandoning your kids is the wrong thing to do? At least the alien looks really awesome here in the close-up, although this dude looks like a secret sex offender. I'm Lance Henriksen for the final time. I was completely pointless. Oh hey, it's Michael Jackson! Look, I love the movie. It's fantastic. The effects are great for its time, they just haven't aged really well. The story is great, it just drags at some points, which may just be the director's cut. It's scary, funny, eerie, and just has a magical and whimsical charm about it. It's definitely one for you to check out. Oh, and even in the credits, everyone gets a last name except Henriksen. He's just Robert. Nobody liked him.
Well, actually...
Tell me a story about Lance Henriksen.
He's just a sci-fi actor